Broncos country, welcome back to another video here on the channel. And in today's video, I'm going to be going over my second roster prediction for the Denver Broncos for this upcoming 2025-26 season. Now, I know there's been a little bit of a gap in between videos, and I am sorry about that. I had some things going on in my personal life, as well as the dead of the off season, right? So not a lot's happening, but stuff is ramping up. We have a football game, the Hall of Fame game, at the end of the month. So football is almost back. And in today's video, like I mentioned, I'm going over my next roster prediction, my roster prediction 2.0. And before we get started, I just have a couple things to say. One, the videos should start ramping up again very soon. Two, if there are any videos you want to see me make, let me know in the comment section below. And three is if you don't like the format of my videos, or if you think something should change in my formats, let me know in the comment section below, as I want to make the videos look as well as possible for all of you. Now, if you do enjoy, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel down below, as the support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump straight in to my roster prediction. So starting off with the quarterback position, it's not a matter of who is going to make the roster. I think it's going to be how many quarterbacks make the roster, right? Bo Nix is obviously going to be the clear-cut starter for the Denver Broncos this season. I don't think there's any debate in that. Had a really solid rookie season, and he even had a back injury for a majority of the games towards the end of the season. He should be fully healthy. He skipped the Pro Bowl to get a surgery on his back. So, yeah, Bo Nix should be back in action very, very soon. And he's obviously the QB1 for this team. Then I got Jarrett Stidham being the backup, and I don't think this should be a shock to anybody, as he's been the backup for the Broncos the past few seasons. He knows the offense that Sean Payton wants to run. We signed him to a 2-year contract extension in the offseason, so this should be a shock to no one that Jarrett Stidham is going to be the backup quarterback this season. But I do think the Broncos keep 3 quarterbacks and Sam Ehlinger on the roster. They signed him obviously to a 1-year deal this offseason, and I think he's has the chance to be the future backup if the Broncos want to go in that direction. Or maybe Sam Ehlinger is looking for a Zach Wilson type of deal, comes to Denver, learns under Sean Payton, and then parlays that into a deal next year to get another chance to start in the league. So I do think the Broncos keep 3 quarterbacks, especially with the new emergency third quarterback rule, where right, you can normally dress 46 players out of the 53 for game day, but you can dress a 47th if that's your emergency quarterback. Now, they can't enter the game unless something happens with the starter and the backup, but I don't know. I feel like Sean Payton likes to do that. Obviously, he did that last year, and the year before, he only carried 2 quarterbacks on the active roster, so it'll be intriguing to see what happens this upcoming season. But in my prediction, I am going with 3 quarterbacks for the Denver Broncos. Next up, moving on to the running back situation, I have the Broncos obviously carrying a couple running backs, the first being J.K. Dobbins, and I listed him first because he is the veteran of the room. I think obviously he's not going to get all the carries because Sean Payton does like to use a running back by committee, but I think it's going to be sort of a running back 1A and 1B with rookie second-round pick R.J. Harvey, who has signed his contract, right? A few days ago, Jahdae Barron signed his contract, and R.J. Harvey signed his contract, so the entire rookie class is signed to their rookie deals, and I think it's going to be a 1A, 1B type of situation between Dobbins and Harvey, and then you're going to have the rest of the room who's going to get a couple carries, but I would expect a majority of the carries being between Dobbins and Harvey. Now, obviously, Dobbins has an injury history, so we'll have to be wary of that. But in my opinion, this upcoming season, I think it's going to depend on the game. Some games, J.K. Dobbins is going to get more carries, and other games, R.J. Harvey is going to get more carries. But I think those two are going to get a majority of the carries this upcoming season. And then you got Audric Estime, who I know a lot of Broncos fans have given up on, but not me. I still like Audric Estime as his kind of third down power back type of role. I know he had his fumbling issues early last season during his rookie year, but I still like what Audric Estime brings to the table as a third running back. I think Audric Estime is pretty solid, right? He's not going to be a bell cow. He's not going to get a whole bunch of carries, but I do think he's going to provide a very useful role for this team and being this big power running back, right? If you need short yardage situations, Audric Estime can give that to you. Know a lot of Broncos fans have given up on him. Not me. I still believe in Audric Estime. And then the fourth running back I actually have being Michael Burton. And this is probably a controversial opinion, only keeping 3 running backs on the active roster, right? This means cutting Jaleel McLaughlin, which I do think McLaughlin could easily make the team, right? That's cutting Blake Watson. That's cutting Tyler Bidet. But to me, I think those 3 plus Michael Burton are going to make the roster, right? Michael Burton is a fullback, been with Sean Payton in New Orleans, right? He makes the roster. And I think what the Broncos like to do is when you get down to the final few weeks of the season, they like to cut Michael Burton, put him on the practice squad, and then activate him to the active roster. That's what they have done, or that's what they did at least last year. And Michael Burton, I do think, plays an important part in Sean Payton's offense. You see a lot of fullback lead blocks, right? You see a lot of fullback dives. You've seen some pass plays go to Michael Burton. He does play a role in the Sean Payton offense. I do think he likes having a fullback. And so, to me, Michael Burton makes the roster. But if you think a fullback maybe doesn't make the roster, maybe you think the Broncos keep another running back, I do think that is probably going to be Jaleel McLaughlin as that scat back type, or Tyler Bidet. We'll have to see. Obviously, this is really before anything has happened in training camp, and some player is probably going to break out in training camp, and it's going to be like, okay, yeah, obviously he's going to make the roster now. But as of right now, this is how I have the running back room. Moving on to the wide receivers, I do think, to me, it's kind of a pick your poison. How many are you going to keep, and who do you want, right? Obviously, Courtland Sutton, I do have being the number 1 receiver. Having that familiarity with Bo Nix is going to help him into year 2. I believe in Bo Nix, and I think he's going to be solid. But I've seen a lot of Broncos fans saying trade away Courtland Sutton. And to me, well, I kind of understand that perspective if you want to go down that route. I would rather have Bo Nix keep his number 1 target from last season to have some familiarity into the offseason, so there's not that much changes, so he can adapt and he can just stay constant in the NFL, so there's not a majority of big changes around him. So I do think Courtland Sutton is the number 1 X receiver. And, Courtland Sutton has grown on me, right? The biggest thing about Courtland Sutton that bothers me, or has bothered me and still does a little bit to this day, is dropping wide open passes, right? It feels like when he goes for these 50-50 balls, he always comes down with it. And then there's times when he has these concentration drops, which are frustrating. But Courtland Sutton, I do think, is the wide receiver 1 on this team. Then at wide receiver 2, this is where it kind of gets dicey. This is where pick who you want as the wide receiver 2. I'm going with Marvin Mims. We saw a lot more design touches towards the end of the year, as well as his production go up in the final few games of the season. And I do think Marvin Mims starts this season as the wide receiver 2. Obviously, going to be the starting returner for both kicks and punts, as he is a dynamic playmaker, and he has made the Pro Bowl multiple times for being a return specialist. But to me, Marvin Mims is a guy who you have to have. Obviously, he's going to make the roster as a returner, but to me, I think he is going to be given his shot at wide receiver 2. As for wide receiver 3, it's going to be Devon Vele for me. He had a really solid rookie season, and for me, he was one of the players that really impressed from that draft class in 2024, right? It's one of those guys who's like, okay, I don't know about this one. There were still wide receivers that I preferred over him in the draft, but he really made an impact his rookie year as this bigger slot wide receiver. He was a reliable target for Bo Nix. And to me, I really like Devon Vele in this role. Maybe he gets pushed down the depth chart with some of the younger guys getting playing time over him, as obviously he was a 27-year-old rookie last year. But I still like what Devon Vele brings to the table, and I'm expecting a very solid year 2 from him. And then you got Troy Franklin, who was obviously Bo Nix's friend and wide receiver at Oregon in college, comes to the NFL. First game, I believe he was a healthy scratch, and then he got playing time for the rest of the season. But the big thing was the deep ball drops from Troy Franklin. But I still really like the upside of Troy Franklin. He's a guy who is, he's got his speed. He can get open. He's not the sharpest route runner, does need to improve in that area, but I still believe in the development and the upside of a Troy Franklin. So to me, Troy Franklin is one of those guys who I would really like to see take a step and move up the depth chart as well, but it's not going to be easy because you got 3rd round rookie Pat Bryant, who I think even I was sleeping on this at the beginning of the season, and well, I guess technically it is the beginning of the season, but during the draft and when we drafted him, I think I was underrating him. I am really excited for what Pat Bryant can bring to the table. The Broncos, we have this type of these bigger receivers, right? And I do think that Pat Bryant, he could easily get moved up the depth chart, and you could have the wide receiver 1 and 2 being Cortland Sutton and Pat Bryant on the outside, and then in the slot, maybe have Marvin Mims, Devon Vele, Troy Franklin. You can move those guys around. So it'll be interesting to see how much playing time Pat Bryant does get as a rookie, because outside of Bo Nix, Sean Payton typically doesn't like to play a whole lot of rookies. But Pat Bryant is going to make the roster, and I'm excited to see what he can bring. He's 5th because he is a rookie, right? So I'm giving the guys who have been here at least a year, I'm starting them above him, but Pat Bryant could easily move up in this depth chart throughout training camp and the preseason. Then moving on, 6th, it's Trent Sherfield. This is purely a special teams move. He might get some snaps on offense for the Broncos, but he's going to be your second returner behind Marvin Mims, or if you want to have 2 deep returners, he is going to be the other returner. He's going to be a gunner on special teams, right? This is a purely special teams player, but he can have an impact on the offensive side of the football as well. I am sorry for hitting the microphone there. Next up, the tight end room. Evan Ingram is clearly taken over as the tight end 1. He's essentially going to be another receiver out there. He's not going to put his hands in the dirt. He is going to be another receiving weapon for Bo Nix and this offense. But if we want to get to pure tight ends, I guess not pure tight ends, but a tight end who's going to stick their hand in the dirt, is going to be Adam Troutman. And he's going to block. He's going to go out for pass patterns, but he's going to be this hand in the dirt tight end for the Denver Broncos. Was with Sean Payton in New Orleans. And then in 2023, his first draft, we traded for him and brought him over. And I do think Adam Troutman is a big addition, or I do like him more as a tight end 2 rather than the starting tight end that he has been over the past few seasons. Troutman, solid guy, right? Going to go out there in 12 personnel, right? I like Troutman, and I'm going to try and start picking up the pace because I am just yapping about some players right now. But number 3, I am keeping Nate Atkins on the roster. There's a couple guys here in the tight end room, and obviously you can tell there's going to be another player after this, but there's a couple guys who can battle for these final 3 slots. I'm including Nate Atkins' spot right here in the 4th spot and beyond. I think there's a couple guys. Obviously, Nate Atkins here. You got Lucas Krull. You got Thomas Yasmin, who was an undrafted free agent out of Utah after the 2024 draft. And 7th round pick Caleb Lohner. I think those guys are all fighting for these number 3 and number 4 spots, as well as obviously the practice squad. But you want to make the active roster, right? You don't want to make the practice squad. But Nate Atkins, he was really solid for the Broncos in the final few games. He could have acted as a fullback, right? You know, he's a blocking guy. He had some big catches towards the end of the season, had a couple of touchdowns, obviously. Do like him as a depth tight end here, and to me, he's going to make the roster over Lucas Krull because my number 4 tight end is going to be 7th round rookie Caleb Lohner. Obviously, this is a shot in the dark, a throw an arrow at the dartboard type of pick, right? Former basketball player. Well, I think he's 6'7". He is super tall. This is a red zone threat that you're hoping to develop. Obviously, hasn't played a whole lot of college football, was a college basketball player, but he only caught 4 passes, and all 4 of them were for touchdowns in his college football career. So this is a guy you're hoping to hit on with the upside and the development. But I do think he makes the roster for the Broncos, as apparently the Colts were trying to get him as an undrafted free agent before the Broncos drafted him in the 7th round. Now, moving on to the tackles for the Denver Broncos, and this is purely the tackles. This isn't offensive line. We'll get to the interior guys in a second. But the left tackle, to no one's shock, is going to be Garrett Bowles as Bo Nix's blindside protector as a left tackle. Then you got Mike McGlinchey as a starting right tackle who came off of a really good season for the Broncos this past season. As for the depth tackles, I was keeping 2, which might be a little bit of a shock because I feel like a lot of teams only carry 1 swing tackle, and then maybe they have a depth guy on the practice squad or something like that. But I have them keeping Alex Palczewski. To me, was a guy the Broncos really liked. Obviously, a former undrafted free agent out of the University of Illinois. And then his rookie season, which was 2 seasons ago, I believe, he got hurt. And rather than cutting him, they actually put him on injured reserve. And I think activated him off of injured reserve to the active roster after that. I could be wrong, but I do think the Broncos really like Alex Palczewski as that swing tackle if you need. And hopefully a future starting tackle, right? Obviously, Garrett Bowles is getting up there in age. Hopefully, he can continue playing at a high level for years to come, right? Obviously, offensive linemen can typically play, or typically you see them play into their mid to late 30s, right? Not saying everyone will, but you see that a lot. And then I also have the Broncos keeping Matt Pert, who was involved quite a lot on the offense, right? If you needed another eligible receiver, Matt Pert was constantly report as eligible for the Broncos. So I do have them keeping him around with him signing a contract extension this offseason. I do think he makes the roster with how the Broncos have utilized him in the past on game day, as well as him obviously signing an extension. Moving to the interior, I do have us keeping the same starting interior guys last season. Luke Wattenberg, who to me, he kind of went right by me, and he had a really solid season that I didn't even notice last year. To me, I think he's going to be the starting center again. Then you got Ben Powers as the starting left guard, Quinn Miners as the starting right guard, one of the best guards in the entire NFL. And then it comes to the two depth guys that I am keeping. The first one is undrafted free agent Clay Webb, who I do think, I personally had like a 5th round grade on him this past draft. Obviously, some character stuff happened, and he falls out of the draft and becomes an undrafted free agent. But I do think the Broncos keep him as a backup center guard, can play both, but I have him more as a backup center. And then the other one is former 7th round pick Nick Gargiulo. And to me, this was between 3 players. It was between Gargiulo, obviously, Alex Forsythe, and then Joe Mikulski, an undrafted free agent out of Oklahoma State. And maybe that's just because that's where I went to college. That's why I had Joe Mikulski up there. But I do think the Broncos give former 7th round pick Nick Gargiulo a chance to play guard, can play center. I think he probably plays guard, but I do think he makes the active roster here. But if anything, if we only keep one extra interior guy, I do think it's going to be Clay Webb. I just love the upside that Clay Webb brings. I think he's a very solid player that the Broncos got in undrafted free agency. Next up, we move on to the defensive line with Zach Allen, obviously making the roster, one of the most important players for the Broncos. I'm going to try and speed through these starters because we know these starters and these stars are going to make the roster, right? So let's get into the meat and potatoes, the depth of the roster here, right? DJ Jones as the starting nose tackle. John Franklin Myers is another starting defensive end. Then the rookie Savion Jones, who a lot of people thought he was going to start as an edge rusher and was best suited for a 4-3 system. Obviously, we run a 3-4 defense, but apparently it looks like he is going to play on the interior of the defensive line rather than an edge rusher. At least that's what it's looking like in the early stages. Obviously could move to the edge later down the road if that's where he performs best. Then you obviously got Malcolm Roach as well, who blew my expectations out of the water in his first season with Denver, was a really solid run stopper, but provided a really solid pass rush as well. So to me, Malcolm Roach was a very underrated player, and I do think he obviously makes the active roster again. And I think all of these guys are going to rotate, right? I think you're going to see a lot of rotations among the defensive line, obviously for rest breaks, for third down, for purely pass rush situations, right? So to me, I think a lot of these guys are going to rotate, but these are the 5 guys we're keeping on the interior of the defensive line, in my opinion. Then moving to the edge rushers, to no one's shock, Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper are the 1-2 starting edge rushers, as well as rookie Jonah Ellis, who had a really solid season. Hopefully he's better because he did suffer an injury during that playoff game, and I think he went out and it was the first half. Can't remember if it was the first or the second quarter, but he did not return in that playoff game, and so hopefully he is back and better for this upcoming season. And then I have Q Robinson making that fourth edge rush spot. You could put Dondre Tillman here. There's a couple guys you could put here, but Q Robinson was a 4th-round pick, and obviously that doesn't guarantee that he makes the roster, but I think the Broncos like the tools and the upside that Q Robinson has. Just didn't have the production in college, and I do think he makes the active roster for the Broncos at the edge position. Obviously played at Alabama, behind Will Anderson, behind Dallas Turner, behind a ton of talented edge rushers. And then this past college football season, he was supposed to get a lot of reps, but went down with injury. So to me, I think the Broncos really like Q Robinson, and he makes it as that 4th edge rush. Obviously, I'm only keeping 4 edge rushers here, and Q Robinson is one of them. Moving on to the inside linebackers, and this is a really intriguing position group. I think this is one of the most intriguing position battles to watch during training camp. Obviously, you have Dre Greenlaw, but this will be his first full season since suffering that torn, Achilles in the Super Bowl 2 years ago with the 49ers. Played a few snaps at the end of last season, but this will be his first full season back. And you got Alex Singleton, who suffered a torn ACL. And I know he played the rest of that Buccaneers game on that torn ACL, but those two guys coming off of some very serious injuries. It'll be interesting to see who the Broncos keep as depth behind them. Obviously, you have Drew Sanders, former 3rd-round pick, and he's been moved all around the place, right? Was a edge rusher coming out of high school, went to Alabama, then transfers to Arkansas and plays off-ball linebacker. And then he's been moving between off-ball linebacker and edge rusher with the Broncos for a while now. Sounds like he's going to be a pressure off-ball linebacker. That's what I think Sean Payton said in the press conference. Was it a month or two ago? But it'll be interesting. Obviously, Drew Sanders suffered an injury at the beginning of last offseason and missed the majority of the season. So it'll be interesting to see how Drew Sanders plays this season. But I'm expecting a lot from Drew Sanders. I really thought a lot of him coming into the 2023 draft, and we just haven't seen a whole lot of him yet. And then I'm keeping Justin Strnad, and this is because he's a veteran linebacker, former 5th-round pick in 2020 out of Wake Forest. When he stepped in, he played decent, nothing crazy when Alex Singleton went down, but I do have the Broncos keeping him on the roster because he's a veteran, because he knows because he knows Vance Joseph's defense. I do think Strnad makes the roster, and if something happens, right, if Greenlaw or Singleton aren't 100% to start the season with the injuries, you have Strnad there to jump in if need be. And then for the 5th one, I'm keeping J.B. Brown, an undrafted free agent out of Kansas this season, and I have him making the roster. To me, if we do keep a 5th inside linebacker, it's going to be between J.B. Brown, obviously of Kansas, and an undrafted free agent last offseason in Lavelle Bailey, who did make the initial roster and then was demoted to the practice squad a few days later. But to me, I do think J.B. Brown is a very intriguing player to watch during training camp, and I have him making this rendition of the final 53-man roster. Moving to corners, here's how I have it laying out. PS2, Patrick Surtain as the CB1. Should be a surprise to no one. Riley Moss, who played really well before the injury last season, is the opposite cornerback of Pat Surtain. Hopefully he can get back to that first half of the season before his injury in terms of his performance, right? So to me, he's going to be the corner 2. And then, And then I have Jahdae Barron as the nickel corner. And maybe this is a bit premature to put him here, but it's a roster prediction. So this is my prediction, is that Jahdae Barron is going to be the starting nickel slot corner for the Broncos come week 1. Very toolsy guy, plays a whole lot of, or I guess he can be moved around as a versatile playmaker, can play the slot, could play outside if you need him to, could play up at safety, could play in the box if you need him to. But I do think Jahdae Barron does start as the starting nickel corner. And you have Jaquan McMillan as that 4th corner, who I still really like. Maybe didn't have the greatest end to the season, but I thought he was a very solid slot for us. And right, so I think it's going to be interesting to see what we do with Jaquan McMillan, whether that's going to be, trading him if there's a team offering a tremendous amount of value for him, or if you want to keep him to have 4 really solid corners if you play in a dime set. and you need to have all these defensive backs on the field, I think Jaquan McMillan would excel in that, and we would have 4 really solid DBs for the Denver Broncos. So it's going to be intriguing to see what we do with McMillan. Still like him, still hope he sticks around with the team. And then my number 5 corner is another guy who excels in the slot, and that's Chris Abrams-Draine, but he played really solid when he came in for relief of Levi Wallace in that game against Cleveland, and then was really solid for the rest of the season. So to me, I do think Chris Abrams-Draine obviously is going to make the roster, former 5th-round pick out of Missouri. But yeah, Chris Abrams-Draine is the number 5 corner. I'm obviously only keeping 5 here, and I really like this group of corners here for the Denver Broncos. It'll be interesting to see, obviously, like I mentioned with McMillan, if any trades are made to extrapolate value and to improve elsewhere on your roster. So that'll be interesting to see to me. And then moving on to the safeties, you got Brandon Jones, who really excelled in his first year in Denver last season. Then you got Talanoa Hufanga, who you signed to a 3-year contract this offseason, who has played and has won an All-Pro honors in the past, but has been dealing with some injuries over the past few seasons. I believe over the past 2 seasons, he's missed a full season's worth of games of 17 total in those past 2 seasons. Then you got PJ Locke, who underwent a successful back surgery, and I do think he makes the roster as this 3rd safety. I don't know how I get forward that far. But then you got JL Skinner, who is someone who I still really like, a 6th-round pick in 2023, a thumper, a hard hitter, and I really like what JL Skinner brings to the team. And then Sam Franklin, who was another signing this offseason to a 1-year deal, who I do think is going to play a majority of special teams, but obviously could get some defensive snaps in there as well. And those are the safeties that I have the Broncos carrying. Onto the specialists, we got kicker Will Lutz, who is just a reliable kicker. When he goes out there, you don't sweat at all. You know, you're going to have confidence that he's going to make the field goal. He's going to make the kick. Then you got rookie punter Jeremy Crawshaw, who was one of the guys who I really talked about in a few mock drafts. Well, I think it was more one, but it was as an undrafted free agent. And I really liked Crawshaw, right? He's got a big leg, just needs to improve on keeping the ball in the air for a longer time, so increases hang time. But really like Jeremy Crawshaw. And then the long snapper is going to be Mitchell Fraboni. But that is my 53-man roster prediction for the Denver Broncos. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. And if you did enjoy, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as the support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully some more videos are going to be published here soon. As always, my name is Parker, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.